And with this series, we intend to support you with all of the amazing mahi that you do by inviting along thought leaders in the volunteering space to have insightful kōrero over your lunch break. For those of you tuning in from Aotearoa, New Zealand, I wanted to say tēnā koutou katoa and welcome. And for those based in Australia, I wanted to respectfully acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we are meeting, the Wurundjeri peoples of the Kulin Nation. We pay respect to their elders, past and present, and we extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples here today. I am very excited today to welcome Shannon Thomson from Red Frogs for a conversation on how Red Frogs recruits and trains young volunteers to support, serve, and safeguard their peers. A very, very important conversation. Shannon is the National Media Liaison and Fundraising Coordinator with over 16 years of volunteer leadership experience. Combining a background in journalism and media with a passion for youth safeguarding and harm reduction, Shannon helps Red Frogs' mission and support young people across New Zealand. So welcome, Shannon. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, team.
Amazing. Quick bit of housekeeping before we kick off. As per usual, you'll see that at the top right-hand side, there's a little place you can pop questions in there for Shannon that we'll refer to at the end of the session, or if they come up and I see them and they're relevant, I'll bring them up as we go through as well. Please don't be shy. We'd love to hear from you. And quickly, before we kick things off, for those of you who aren't aware of Rosterfy, or if it's your first time joining one of these sessions, we are an Australian-founded volunteer management system supporting organisations to put the power of automation at the heart of their volunteer programs, helping you to save time, ensure compliance, and focus on what matters most, your volunteers and your community. This is a little snapshot of some of the organisations that we've partnered with as well. And I really quickly wanted to touch on our brand new messaging feature, which I don't do this often, so bear with me, but I'm just so excited about this one because so many of our customers are already receiving huge value from it. And from my experience, speaking with so many organizations and people like you on this day to day, one of the main challenges in regards to their role and the admin load really is that around that communication, and often managing a lot of different WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger groups, struggling to keep track of them all, moderating them appropriately, and ensuring that this is yet another thread that always has to have the most up-to-date information. It can often cause some confusion. So we've taken on all of that feedback from our customers and launched this tool. So not only can it do the function of those platforms that you're already using, but so much more, and in a centralized place. So we've created dynamic channels that sync with your workforce. They're linked directly to your shifts, events, groups, roles, or locations. And by automating the process, volunteers are instantly added or removed from channels, keeping your teams synchronized without that extra administrative overhead. And because I know I'll get this question, we have built-in AI automation, which means that you can ensure that all the communications are kept safe and inclusive so your team can always use them with confidence. There's a lot more to this feature. We're always rolling out new features here at Rosterfy, but this is just one that I'm very super excited about. And if you'd like to hear more about it, at the end of the session, as always, I'll have my QR code up. Please feel free to scan it and book in a time with me, and I can take you through that and a lot more that we have as well. But we've got a lot to get through today, Shannon. So without further ado, I wanted to kick off the conversation because I just think the work that you do is so enormously important. And I come from a background of working in peer support as well. So I know the value and what it can bring. So for anyone who isn't familiar with Red Frogs, can you give us a quick overview of what you do and the role that volunteers play for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So Red Frogs, we are... if you're to sum us up, our mission is to safeguard a generation, right? And what does that actually look like on a practical level? So we are looking after young people in alcohol-filled environments. So that could be at a music festival or a concert. It could be handing out water at a sports event. It could be running a safe zone in the centre of town or down Castle Street, which is a notorious party street here in London. It could be cooking pancakes and hanging out with students playing board games in the University Hall of Residence. It could be looking after students at a high school students at a after-ball party. So wherever those places are where young people are gathering and there's alcohol and stuff around, our job there is just to help keep them safe. So we're like the big, brothers and sisters, older cousins that are fun, who are not there to judge, but just to help look after them. And their volunteers play a really key role. Yeah, I think our volunteers are pretty amazing. Like, they put themselves in places that not many people want to go to. They will, catch vomit, they'll pick up people,
Wow.
get them home, they'll sit with them in really vulnerable moments, and they just do it with incredible grace, incredible humility, and they're there just to look after people. So I think they're pretty amazing.
Absolutely. And we were just talking before we kicked off the conversation about how this will be your second year this year at Rhythm and Vines. I'm very familiar with Rhythm and Vines from my past when I was much younger. But I was just saying, wow, that would have been so impactful to have around that time, because like what I was seeing in a lot of young people, and it's that whole peer thing, right? Of people your age there to help. You don't feel like you're getting in trouble. You feel like, they're kind of safe people that are actually just there genuinely reaching out. So I just think it's a really genius mission, and I can see why you've been so impactful and successful. So on that, because these volunteers, as I said, are often supporting people their own age, why do you think that peer-to-peer model works so well?
Yeah, I think it's really key, particularly in the spaces where in uni campuses and halls and stuff like that, you're dealing with people who are similar age to you. So you are, it is like their older brother and sister, someone that you can look up to. Maybe they've been through what you've been through, they studied at the same course or something similar. It's really relatable. We find it works really well, particularly in those environments. In saying that, our volunteers range from 18 through to 71, and so we actually do have like older volunteers who are in those spaces cooking pancakes, handing out water, looking after people. Sometimes they just want, a mum or a dad or a grandparent. But their older brother and sister model works really well. It's easy to come alongside people and say, hey, do you really think you should do that? Maybe that's not such a smart idea. Let's get down off the roof, rather than the authoritative, don't do this. Yeah,
absolutely. And young people are often described as a difficult demographic to recruit into volunteering. And I've had previous conversations on this webinar about how I don't think that's true. It's definitely the way that you engage them. But from your experience, has that been your experience? Or do you think that organizations do need to rethink on how they engage them?
I think it's a mix of things. There's a lot of things that are competing for young people's time and attention. A lot of our volunteers are university students, so during that time of exam season, it can be really hard to get volunteers. They've got other priorities, but at other times, they've got there's things that we're doing that appeal to them. A music festival or a sports game. Maybe they're a Highlanders fan and they want to, just be in the crowd and handing out water. So I think it is a bit of a mix. I wouldn't say that they're definitely completely difficult, but I think you've got to appeal to them in the right way. Yeah,
absolutely. And so what do you think motivates a young person to become a red frog in the first place? Because I think this is relevant, not even just for red frogs, but we've spoken to previous guests about there's got to be that kind of moment or something that gets them to say, this is the cause that I want to give my time to. What do you think that is for red frogs?
Well, I think you've hit the nail on the head when you said this is a cause that I want to get behind. And I think Red Frogs does give people a cause. They want to safeguard young people in these environments. And so young people today, they are very passionate about, having a cause and being on mission and, having something that this is what they're doing. And so I think Red Frogs does give them that. I think also the froggers are really fun. And so we try to make, even in those environments, it looks really fun, and it is really fun to be a Red Frogger. We've had, funders come down to check out our safe zones and stuff before, and they're like, oh, you guys look like you're having a really great time, and you hear the students come and go, oh, the Red Frogs are here, let's grab a pancake. So I think there's that element of fun that really appeals to people. We've also got volunteers that they previously may have been helped by a red frog, or their friends have been helped, and so they actually see the practical impact. They know that firsthand, and so they want to give back. I know for me, so I've been with Red Frogs for 16 years, volunteered for most of that time, and even if I wasn't on team now, I would still be volunteering, and I plan to be volunteering long after I finish on team. And I think for me, I found my place. I found my fit. I found somewhere that something that I'm really passionate about and can just really get behind. I really love it. I found community. We talk about that Red Frogs as whānau. We've got froggers that we met in Australia who, we hang out with each other's families and all that kind of stuff. So I think there's a whole lot of things that encompass why, that attract people to Red Frogs. So
yeah, absolutely. on that, you've said you found your place. Is there
Yeah.
something about that made it feel like it was really your place? Like, is there something that stood out for you maybe in comparison to other volunteering opportunities that you had before, where you were like, this is just where I want to be?
Yeah, I've done lots of different volunteering stuff over the years. I was a youth worker. I was involved in different like youth groups and stuff like that, and community activities. But there was just something really about Red Frogs that caught my attention. I come from a media space as well, so the background, I wanted to be a conflict photographer and go into places and tell stories of humanity, and just hope in some of those spaces. And for me, I think I never did that. I had children, but with Red Frogs, I've found something like that. I mean, you go down Castle Street in Dunedin and there's fireworks and bottles, and there's lots of it is kind of like that, but I think more than that, I think, I can use my media skills in it. We also find that for some people, being on the front lines, dealing with those large crowded spaces isn't necessarily for them, but they can cook pancakes, and so that frees up other members of the team to have the conversations, to do that other stuff that they're not so keen on. We've got people who come along and they will help at New Year's by, supporting the volunteers by cooking our meals and providing a safe space just to come and have a break, and doing logistics behind the scenes. So I think there's a space for people, regardless of what it is that they want to do.
Yeah, awesome. And what have you learned about making that initial sign-up process as low friction as possible, particularly because you are often recruiting for that younger demographic? Not always, but often.
Yeah, definitely. We definitely do need to make it just as easy as possible. It's a bit of a balance. There's a bit of compliance involved in being a Red Frog volunteer. We need to make sure that our volunteers are safe people to volunteer, to look after vulnerable young people, but also make sure that it is easy for them to sign up. So it needs to be simple and robust. And we've found by having a really simplified process, that definitely helps. We find it's often our older volunteers that we have to sit with to help them. So the young ones seem to do pretty well.
Okay, awesome. And are there traditional volunteer recruitment approaches that you found simply don't work particularly well with that Gen Z group?
Yeah, I think there's lots of things competing for everyone's attention. So I think the traditional, like stick a poster up here, or send out a newsletter call out for volunteers. It's not really going to get people's attention. There's so much noise coming at people. What we've done, it's friends inviting friends along to get involved, or those one-on-one conversations. That seems to be really, really successful in getting volunteers that way.
Yeah, absolutely. As you kind of touched on before, if we're moving into more like training and safeguarding, Red Frogs volunteers can find themselves in some pretty high pressure situations. And so what does someone need to learn before they're ready to go on a shift?
Yeah, we as part of our onboarding process, we do some basic core training with our volunteers. So, the practical things of this is what we do, what we don't do. This is what Red Frog's role is. We are we don't replace, emergency services or police or anyone like that. We work alongside them. We refer to them. So we talk through that kind of stuff, our culture. How do we behave when we're in a Red Frog shirt? How do we speak to one another? All that kind of stuff. But we also have to do some practical stuff, like how do you hold a vomit bag? That's very key. Don't hold it straight in front of you. You may end up wearing it. So, we do go through some practical things, even down to, cooking pancakes. Some people don't know, they've never had that experience of cooking pancakes on a barbecue. So teaching them that. How to hold a conversation, if you're in a hall or even on the street at a safe zone, how do you have a conversation with someone? And how do you know when that conversation is over? You don't want that awkward, like chasing someone down the street trying to continue a conversation. So, we go through some of those things just to make sure that the volunteers, they feel equipped before they go out.
Absolutely. And that just has me thinking, you've obviously got this younger demographic, and it sounds like you've got quite specific training requirements per role that you're almost recruiting for. Do you find a lot of cross-pollination across those different roles? Like volunteers wanting to do multiple, like maybe cook pancakes and then do this and then do that? And if so, how do you keep track of all of that, and who's done what training and who's compliant? Like, how do you manage that?
Yeah, so we keep track of who is who's got their base compliance, police all that kind of stuff, and have they done their core training? And then a lot of it, when it comes to like pancakes and how the conversation, those aren't formal trainings as such. It's more we have those in our briefings ahead of our ahead of going out on an event, for example, or ahead of going into a hall. So, but we do also have, trainings for volunteers who are just going to go do festivals or who are going to go and be in universities. At New Year's, we've got 7 locations across the country. Every location and response is different. So we have a specific training. So Queenstown, Wanaka, our volunteers are there between 3 and 5 nights. And so we have specific training for them on what to expect in Wanaka. This is where you'll find things. This is what to look out for. This is where you get help. This is the processes of what we're doing. So we do that. Yeah, there's a lot of keeping track.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's something that I often find when organizations come in and chat to us, when they're similar to you and they've got so many different roles with so many different layers of compliance, and wanting to make sure that it's as not even just past obviously you've got the initial onboarding of a volunteer, but then wanting to make sure that it's as low friction if they want to get involved in more. Like if they want to do more and more and more, making sure that it's as easy as possible for them to complete that. At Rosterfy, we have our system's very intelligent. So when somebody does apply for something new, they see an event or a role and they go, actually, that looks really cool. I want to get involved in that New Year's festival or something. They can do that, and our system automatically does like a bit of a gap analysis of what requirements do they already meet versus what additional is needed, and then it can assign them that. But it's really interesting, especially working with this younger demographic. You've got to make that barrier to entry, I think, quite low, even if it is in cases of where compliance is really important and training and understanding, because they're working on the front line and they're representing red frogs to people, and you want to make sure that every experience a young person or whoever has with your red frogs is really good, so that they keep coming back for support, right? Because they might be actually interacting with a lot of the same people across all these different locations.
Absolutely. We want to make sure that our volunteers are having a good time too. So it's about equipping them to make sure that when they go out, they feel supported, they feel like they know what they're doing, they feel safe. So that's all a key part of it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's what, even talking in a previous webinar I did with Anna Taylor from Very Special Kids, and we were talking about that older demographic and how they're a bit resistant to things. It's usually they're only resistant when they don't feel like they've got all the knowledge that they need and they're really well equipped to do what they need to do. And so, I can see why in a role like what you're doing at Red Frogs, that would be so important. Confidence in people and in what they're doing. Awesome. How do you teach your volunteers to support their peers without feeling like they personally have to solve every situation, which I think is actually something that might be common across quite a few different roles in volunteering, when people are volunteering with people face to face?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really, I think it's human nature to want to fix things and to solve the problem and to be the answer. But one of the things that we teach our volunteers is we are a referral agency. So we refer on to others. So we do not replace, paramedics or security or campus watch, which is like student campus security. We don't replace police or anything like that. We work with them, we partner with them. And so that takes a lot of the pressure off because we're referring on to them. And so each activation we do, we've got different processes and policies that we follow to make sure that we're consistent across our activations and our responses. But I think it is, it's natural for us as people just to want to solve things. So I think it is about having those conversations and just coaching people. Hey, that was really awesome when you did that, but you don't need to actually take that on board. We're going to hand them over to them. And what we've got down here in Dunedin is a really great relationship with Hatohone St John. And so we can actually, if we've had to send someone off in an ambulance, we can actually call the watch commander and they'll tell us, how did that story finish? So sometimes if someone's been sitting with someone for a number of hours, you kind of draw an attachment, you're caring for them, looking after them, making sure that they're okay, and then you send them off home or in an ambulance, and so the story's not complete. You don't know what happened, how are they doing. And so I think when we can fill in the gaps for the volunteering, bring them back and go, hey, this is what we've heard this happen, they're fine now, they've been released to go home, I'm really grateful for the work that you've done. That helps give them closure, which helps as well, I think.
It's quite important to close that loop sometimes, especially for volunteers. Sorry, that my Wi-Fi just cut out there for a second. But I think that kind of leads into my next question around keeping your volunteers safe, like whether that's psychologically, whether that's physically, because your volunteers are working at festivals or New Year's celebrations or high energy environments that are often alcohol fueled or other fueled, as you mentioned. So what systems do you have in place to make sure that the volunteers themselves stay safe?
Yeah, we've got a lot of processes and systems in place, and we coach them through those. One of the key things is our volunteers are never alone. So you will never see a red frogger out on shift on their own. We're always in teams, and they're always placed with more experienced team members. So there'll be a team leader who will know how to handle different situations. So we have that. We also make sure that if something is happening, that those of us in leadership are aware, so we can provide support. And we look at how do we debrief a situation afterwards. So we've got stuff on the ground, processes in place. You're never alone, all that kind of stuff. This is what to look out for. If there's a fight breaking out, we are leaving, all that kind of stuff. But then also afterwards, you debrief. How are you feeling? What was happening for you in that moment? And then we can help them debrief enough so that they can go to sleep. That does, if it's playing on their mind, though, where do we refer them on to? So we've got processes in place to make sure that there's support for people. At New Year's, which is like multi-day responses, people are tired. They've been going for a couple of days, and what is triggering for one person may be completely normal for someone else. So we can never assume that everyone's all good or they're not. So we always we make sure that we're checking with their teams. What is it? Do we need to take them out for coffee and just have a chat, help them debrief, process? Do they just need to get some sleep now? Do they just need to get some food? So there's some practical things in there, but then also making sure we've got places to refer them on to so that they're getting additional support if needed.
Absolutely. And I think that's something, working with young people, but especially in those high pressure environments, that face-to-face of having people that have the time to sit with volunteers and actually, walk them through and do that safeguarding for them is so super important, and it can't be overlooked. And I think often just because somebody turns 18 or whatever doesn't necessarily mean that they're suddenly an adult. Like there's a lot of when it comes to young people, there's a lot of responsibility, I think, that we have on bringing these younger generations through on how we support them and what they might need and ways in which that we can enable teams to do that, so they have the time to actually spend in debriefing and things. Have you changed anything about your training over the years as the risks facing young people have changed?
I think back to our first New Year's response in Queenstown and Wanaka, and you don't know what you don't know, and so we did some basics of what we thought the environment was going to be like based on chats with council and stuff like that, and so we trained around that. And then it was not as chilled a time as we thought. There was way more happening, so we adjusted our training. What do the teams need to know? How do we time the training? We probably should train our team leaders ahead of our volunteers, not the other way around, so that then they can support the volunteers in the training. We've changed a few things like that. There's also been, times have changed. So we're seeing a high prevalence of drugs. So we're teaching our team, what's a stimulant, what's a hallucinogen, what's a depressant, and how to respond to those things, how to recognize them. So those sorts of things have changed. We're constantly trying to move towards best practice to make sure that we are doing providing the best care, not only for the patrons, but for our volunteers. So we're constantly reviewing what we do and can we do it better.
Absolutely. And this kind of moves into a little bit, we're talking about culture and like retaining those volunteers as well. And you've mentioned that you've got team leaders. So I would like to touch on that as like whether or not you have a bit of a hierarchy, like once a volunteer is a student or a young person has been with you for a while, like can they work up through that hierarchy and give them more and more responsibility, and what that might look like as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got a bit of a hierarchy, I guess is the right word. So we have our team members, our crew, and then they'll be placed into a team depending on the event. So, and that might just be, hey, this person's done, they're pretty experienced. We want to give them a chance to be a leader, and we'll coach them in that, or they're a leader in this space and we can do that. When it comes to likes of our New Year's space, we have a very large leadership team. So we've got, for example, location leadership, so someone who's overseeing the overall location. Then within that we'll have another layer of leadership who are dealing with everyone on the ground. Then we'll have amongst that the volunteer support team and people who are there to look after the safe zone and specifically, and then we've got the team leaders and stuff like that. So we do have, there is opportunity within that. Once people have done it a few times, it's not just you've done it a number of times, you can now be a leader. It's making sure we've got the right people in the right place. And so there are some people who want to be leaders, but maybe it's not the right environment for them. So let's try them out. Let's help support them and be a leader over here first. And then we can look at how they go before we put them into a more high intense environment. A lot of our team will joke, particularly for New Year's, that you don't get to hang out with your friends because the more experienced you become, you get sent to go to different places to help lead things. So it's making sure that we've got the right people in the right place at the right time.
Okay. And what do you think makes someone come back for their second or third or 10th Red Frogs event rather than treating it as a one-off volunteering experience?
Yeah,
this is a big one, I think, for many people.
Yeah, I think it's their experience. We want to make sure that the volunteers are having a really good time. Red frogging is not for everyone, and that's actually okay. And and we'll tell people, you know, if this is not for you, that's okay. We can help you find somewhere else that is a really good fit for you. Because we want to make sure that if they're not having a good time, if it's not for them, you know, don't do that to yourself. So we want to make sure that people are in the right place, they've got the right fit. What is it that they enjoy? So I think our culture comes down to it. They've had a really good time. I mean, I keep going back to our New Year's response, but we've been doing this for 10 years now. And, you know, it always amazed me that people would pay to come somewhere to catch vomit, essentially. And part of it is they have a really good time. There's community. They can see the impact that they're having. They've found their fit. So whether it's, we've got people who come back and cook the meals for the team each year, or they come back and they help run the safe zone, or they do media with me. And I think, they found their fit. They've found something that they're passionate about, but they have a really great time doing it.
Yeah, that sense of community is huge, I think, for a young person as well. And I think that's, definitely what always would keep them coming back. Do you have any issues at all, or have you, with burnout? I know this is a big thing across a lot of our organizations, but particularly with it being quite an emotionally demanding role, I can imagine. How do you look after your volunteers? I know you've touched a bit on this, but after a difficult shift or event, or how do you look at reducing the risk of burnout?
Yeah, I think part of it is we know the volunteers. So in each area where we're operating, like our coordinators and our leaders and stuff, they know the volunteers. And so they can recognize signs of, hey, are you doing okay? Or, hey, you're just starting a new job and you've signed up for like 4 nights down Castle Street. Is that the wisest thing? You know, you're going to be doing, you know, a full day of work and then out for a number of hours, 4 nights in a row. So I think being able to have those conversations with them to go, is this wise? And it's okay to actually say no. You don't need to volunteer. You know, there's plenty of other opportunities. You don't have to volunteer this time. So I think that's a really good thing. And then just making sure that we've got processes in place to make sure that we're looking after our volunteers, that we're not having them, you know, expect them to come out and do every single event. We've got plenty of events on across a whole range of things, and they don't have to do all of them. They can just, pick and choose what is right for them. And also, you know, if someone says no, like, we let them know that it's actually okay. It's okay to say no. I think having that really helps. Yeah,
I think what you mentioned before about having someone, you know, you've got a team leader with that information that actually this person's booked in for 4 shifts. We have a feature of that on Rosterfy as well, where you can set things in place to say, actually, there's not enough time between a shift, or maybe it sends an automation to someone on the team to be like, so they know, actually, this volunteer is booked in too many, because people can get really enthusiastic and really excited and not realize the drain. So enabling your team to have that information at their fingertips, I think is really important. We're coming quick to the end of our time. We've also got a couple of questions that have come through. I wanted to just do one final question from me, which is that if an organization listening today wants to attract more young volunteers, what is one thing you think they should stop doing and one thing you think they should start doing?
Oh, I've been thinking about this one. It's a really tricky question. It's a big one.
Yeah.
I think it comes down to culture. I think you want it to be fun. And I think if you can communicate to them the impact that they are having, so know how to tell your story. What is the impact that them as a volunteer is going to be part of? I think that's really key, because as we said, young people want to jump onto a cause. Don't necessarily think about numbers and stats. Numbers and stats are awesome for showing, you know, a wide range, but they kind of people turn off. I think tell the stories of the, the single person, like the person who you gave a care parcel to and at the right time when it was really needed and the impact that had, or those sorts of things. Yeah, tell those stories, I think that's really key.
Okay, awesome. Now, I had a couple of questions come through. One from Valerie here. How do you recommend to improve engagement? Some volunteers might only register for their CV or just for a short period of time. You've sort of touched on this, but maybe you could talk about like from when someone applies with their CV and maybe if there's a drop-off rate or how you manage to stop that from happening and really make sure you're getting the most, you're picking up on that enthusiasm.
Yeah, we definitely have it as an issue, particularly around festival season. Hey, I want to go and frog at this festival. So yeah, it's definitely a thing. And I don't think I've got the right answer for it. But I think just chatting with them, hey, how did you find this? We've got other events similar to this. Do you want to jump on board?
Yeah.
That kind of thing. I think also understanding why is it that they have just jumped on board for a short time? Is it they just had this space and time, or now they're moving, or there's been a change that's happened, or maybe it was just for their CV. Yeah, it's a tricky one.
Absolutely. It's something that all organizations say. We've got that built into Rosterfy as well, where you can actually have a look at like the onboarding program, the onboarding steps of the journey of the volunteers going on and where they may be getting held up. And so you can start looking into it. But I think we can always expect there's just going to be things that happen that we don't have visibility of. We can get as much visibility as we can with great systems and great automations and processes and by having conversations, but there's always going to be things that we don't have visibility to, especially in the life of a young person, which I feel like is just very dynamic and lots of things going on. Yes. And one final question from Jessie. Can you expand on your recruitment process slightly? What are the actual steps you go through? Did you find that there were steps you could remove from this process over time?
Oh, I think we've been refining for a while, and it's only been in the past few years, thanks to our team in Australia, that we've managed to get a bit more of a refined process. So they sign up to become a volunteer. We have a code of conduct that this is how they agree to operate. They do their online training. They have to provide a reference, and then we kind of go from there. We connect them in with the team. And that's about as simple as we can. Oh, also police vetting, because that's very, very key, is making sure. So we've got to have those things in place, and then they can volunteer. And then it's a matter of them, if it's in the halls, they might be in a team that's going in regularly, or it might just be a matter of signing up for events that are happening in the area. Yeah.
I think the whole refining is always really important, right? I think it is important every year or so to look at your processes and be like, what's just here because it's been here historically versus what's actually needed. And then how many, is there ways that we can centralize everything for them to make it super easy, and what can be added into what? Like, does they have to be working off a bunch of different things? Can we bring it all into one place? I think is something that makes it.
And we also do a bit of follow-up as well. Hey guys, you've done this bit. Can you do this? Have you received this? We have it all in one central place and we can see it, but sometimes it's just a matter of following up with them. Hey, we just need you to do this. Is there anything that we can help you with? So
absolutely. I think the right system and things as well can help you with that, with automations and prompts and letting your team know so they have all the information as well. We've gone a bit over time. So I just wanted to, first of all, say, Shannon, thank you so much. These conversations always feel much too quick for me because I feel like they're always so insightful. So I just love hearing about the fantastic work you do. I'm a huge fan of peer support. I do peer support myself, volunteering in my spare time. So I just know the impact you're making on the ground. And it was a pleasure to talk to you today. So thank you so much for sharing Red Frogs' mission and a little bit of insight on how you're so successful and the great work you're doing. So appreciated. So thank you so much. For anyone that is interested in learning more about Rosterfy or just chatting, or if you know someone that you think should be on one of our upcoming webinars, please let me know. Here's the QR code. Otherwise, mā te wā, everybody. Thank you so much. Go well. Have a lovely rest of your day, and we hope to see you on the next session. And thank you again to Shannon.
Thanks, team.